And so he's preparing to like go work in Japan for this guy who owns this gym. And then I asked him like, can I go with, because I want to go to Japan.
Right.
And he was really nice. And he was like, I can ask if, maybe they want a female coach. I'm sure you can do it. I hadn't even thought of that.
You hadn't thought about being a coach at all?
I had thought about it, but I wasn't going to like, I want to work too. I just wanted to go with him, sit there and like be in Japan. And he was like, I can talk to like your sponsor. And then he was like, you're really lucky. You can work there too.
Oh.
So we're waiting for like visa and work permit and stuff. And then he said, while you're here, they can train you to hold pads and stuff. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm helping sometimes, but I'm not officially working because of course then you need like work permit and all that.
Well, this is a big change for a lot of reasons. One is that you're like the Westerner who's been in Thailand for the longest period of time, like consistently in Thailand, fighting and training.
Yeah.
And you've been in Phuket most of the time.
Yeah.
And you did try coming up to Chiang Mai before. As you said a minute ago, it wasn't the right time for you.
Yeah.
But Chiang Mai is like a hub of female Muay Thai. And for a while, Phuket was like a hub of female Muay Thai. I'm not sure, I have to ask you what it's like now. But you're like bookending this entire country in terms of like where these two hubs are. So can you talk a little bit about your experience in all this time of the female Muay Thai scene in Thailand?
Okay, so I think when I started, so this is in 2007, Jesus, it's such a long time ago. I feel ancient. It was in November 2007. Actually, my first time was here in the north. Like I was training in Pai. It was only for a month. And I did my first fight in Taipei Stadium. And I was obsessed. I went home to Sweden and like, saving money to come back. But then I ended up in Phuket because I had Swedish friends there. Okay. So it just felt like, safer. So I just ended up staying there. And at the time, that was really good for me. There wasn't a lot of foreigners. It was like barely any female girls. It was like me and maybe two others in Phuket. But there was good opponents for my weight. If you were like around 55 kilos, you had so many good opponents. But if you were like over 60, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And then like lower, there was, but wasn't like the foreigners who were there, they were like, 55 kilos. So the girls that I fought, either they were like brand new, like you were, or they had like 30, 40, 50 fights.
Right.
And then, I'm sure you're aware of this, but then there was a promoter, I can't remember his name, but he has had these Asa Wyndham fights on TV on, I think it was Channel 9 on Saturdays.
Yeah, Hinson
so,
Chai.
So there was like a lot of female, that's where all the female fighters fought.
You fought on Asa Wyndham?
No, I didn't, because I never got to that. I was like too much of a beginner still, but it was like my dream to get that like outfit, the Emroy Hastip outfit. Then I don't know, they stopped, he died or whatever happened. I'm not even sure. They stopped doing that. And then it was only, I could fight so much in Phuket because there were so many girls my weight, but they were much better than me. So it was like win, lose, win, lose. My first like 15 fights, I would either win by knockout, my knees, or I would like lose on points. So I didn't even know what it was like to like win on points. I remember the first time when I won by points, I was like, I didn't even know like how this whole scoring game that you should learn early. That took me like 20, 30 fights to learn.
I was the same. I think I was 15 or 16 fights in before I went on points. And I was like, oh my God.
It's like a whole new world opens up. It's like, so that's how you do it, because you never got there. And then there was only, in Bangkok, there was only like Queen's Birthday, King's Birthday, and like King's Cup. There weren't these like female events that they have now. And then, I was just fighting. I think I must have like 50, 60 fights in Phuket. And there were only 2 stadiums there then, but there was just loads of opponents.
Became, like Sylvie was known as like a female-friendly fight camp. That happened around you? Like that grew up while you were already there?
Yeah, like I was at one gym first, J Prapa, and then I was at Rawai Muay Thai, which was like more organized, and that's where I sort of learned more about, he had a proper fight team and several female fighters as well, so I kind of learned more about fighting. And then I went to Sylvie, so Sylvie developed a lot while I was there. So when I joined Sylvie, there weren't really any foreign fighters at all, and it was just me and a friend of mine who were like the only female fighters there. So that I don't think that the owner had the plan to like make it the best fit. It's just kind of happened.
Right.
Because we trained there and then we got big fights. I already was established because I had already like 40 fights or something. So I would just like he would get called up by promoters and they would like ask for me. So I got some big fights. Then the WMC started to do their fights in Phuket, and it was like lots of drama around that because some people were like, that's not real because Bangla is a crap stadium, and it's like, well, there's like the president of the WMC and the whole crap, so how is it not real? Yeah, so like our fighters got to fight for some of the WMC titles. So I won one, and then Justine Kish, who is now in UFC, she won one, and then Jerry, another female fighter, that won one. So it was 3 of us who won this like title in different weight categories. And then because it was now held in Phuket, we also got to defend it there. So the Queen's birthday, they had like a huge in Bangla Stadium, like televised event, real event. So I think this is what attracted so many girls there, because it was like, oh, you can, it sounds stupid, it was kind of like, oh, maybe if I go there I can become a world champion too, kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure this is what sort of like made people want to go there. So there was like loads of girls coming there, which was great. So, but it didn't work out in the end because girls get really jealous of each other, and I feel like lots of them were like, oh, but I sacrificed everything and I stayed 1 year here, so I should like get a world title shot too. And it's like, I've been like doing the dog years for like 5 years. Like people kind of expected to get the same just because they were there. And yeah, so it didn't work out in the end. Like everyone fell out and got jealous of each other, and everyone stopped there, and now they don't really have any foreign fighters anymore, and he just focuses on Thai boys now.
Do you feel like the women who come to gyms, this is true of male fighters too, because you're in a foreign country, maybe you don't speak the language, whatever the thing is, you depend on your gym to like find fights for you and all this stuff. But women, because we're often isolated in gyms, we come here and we kind of don't have the same layout that a male fighter does, because we're totally not the norm for what a Muay Thai fighter is.
Yeah.
We depend so much on our gym or on our connections to promote us and things like that. Do you feel like that dependence for women who come to Thailand is difficult? Like your dependence on your gyms or your connections?
Like yes and no. Like, so I was always a sponsored fighter, so you have very little freedom. You know, you kind of do what your boss says. And what I have realized afterwards, when I've been to other gyms, before and after, when I look back, at both Rawai Muay Thai and Simbi, I had great management because they knew how to like build a fighter, and they had good connections. They know when to say no to fights. You can't just say yes to everything because, you know, that's gonna, yeah. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, you can't fight with this girl because then you look bad, blah, blah, blah. Right. It's like, if they would ask me, I'd just say yes to everything. I said yes to so many stupid things, and I just like end up hurt, you know, just because I didn't want to lose any opportunities. But if you have a good manager, and not all gyms have this, I would say most gyms don't have this. My first gym didn't. I was just at the receiving end of these like unfair matchups for like a year and a half.
And was that you saying yes to the fight, or was that your gym saying yes to fight?
Yeah, it was my gym not having the balls or not having the power to like call the shots with the promoter. And I had no idea, you know, I just didn't know anything. I couldn't even speak Thai at the time. And there was like one English speaking trainer there. So we would sit in the car on the way to the stadium, and they were like, you know, giving me these instructions like, okay, pretend like you can't fight in round 1, 2, and then round 3 we give you this.
I know that one.
Yeah, it was like on this, like I didn't know anything.
You're like, I'm not that good yet.
I just did what they told me, you know. So all this that I'm telling you, this is what I have sort of like learned afterwards, because now I have this knowledge and I can look back, and I was like, oh, that's what happened. But then I had no idea. I mean, I fought some girls who were like, I fought one girl who was like fucking 70 kilos and 6 foot, and I'm like, this is a bit unfair, and like it still didn't say no because I was like too scared to like stand up for myself. And then they gave me like, they were like, oh, of course, like I broke my nose, and like they stopped it in round 2. I was like, thanks. And they were like, you get new fight in 4 days. And then they gave me like a smaller fighter, and they gave me that I could like beat really easily, and then they gave me a belt, and it was like,
That's not.
That was supposed to like compensate, you know. This was the level my fighting was on for like years. You know, I just did what I was told basically. But because that was my first gym, I also had nothing to compare with.
Right.
And then yeah, it was much more professional. I think it's also the personality of the owner of your gym. Like, what kind of person is he?
Right.
Like, they have to be confident and like powerful and call the shots, and like not everyone can do these. You know, do this with promoters, because I mean, you know as well, but like how you interact with, like, you know, and the politics and everything, it's important. It's a huge part.
Yeah. How has learning Thai shaped that for you? Like, when did you actually start learning Thai?
I learned, like, I went to school First I stayed 6 months, and then I came back and I stayed for like my first year, and that year just like became 10 years. That's when I studied, and I went to school like twice a week, and then I met my ex-boyfriend who couldn't speak any English. So I learned, it took me like a really long time to learn because I was like shy. So it took like a year and a half to learn probably. So it was probably when I was at Rawai Muay Thai, my Thai was enough so that the trainers, even though they could speak English, they'd speak Thai to me, and then it'd get better. Yeah, and I learned a lot, and I got treated very differently by the trainers. I noticed that they treated me like a Thai because I could speak Thai. Also maybe because my boyfriend was Thai. So I was kind of like treated like them, and I was such a Thai wannabe at the time. I was like, I want to be like real Thai, you know. I kind of was like, oh, Phuket is so like touristy. Then I went to Isan, and I was like, God, take me back to Phuket. I'm never coming back to this like rice field shit. So it's funny when I look back how I was, because I was so like, oh, I want to be like a Thai, and I was treated like a Thai, and it's not fun.
It's not always, no,
it isn't. Like, and especially when you're a girl, because they kind of don't know where to put you in this hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like very I adapt very easily. So you know how you're like there, you just have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And then that has kind of stuck with me. Now I'm at a gym where everyone calls me P, because I'm like 10 years older than them, and
That's
it's like it just feels weird to not be like, you know.
Yeah.
I never get used to this like hierarchy, and where you know, putting yourself, even though you know where you are, I can't really act after it, because you know.
Do you think that speaking Thai, even though it's hard when you start being able to understand it, because you can then hear what people are saying about you and things like that, do you think that it gave you more authority, or do you think that it gave you less authority in that being treated like a Thai, you're then expected to act like a Thai?
Like both yes and no. Like, I think because I got so many fight opportunities in Thailand, like, I know that I'm not the best fighter, but I think I was really well liked by the Muay Thai community, because I adapted so much.
Yeah.
And I could speak Thai, and I think people who met me could tell that I was like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problematics in Thailand, but I was embracing it, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the foreigner who came in and like, no, I'm gonna do what, you know, my trainer at home tells me to. If they told me to like run 2 more hours, I did, and people were like, you're stupid, you know that, blah blah blah, and I was like, yeah, but I'm gonna do what my trainer says, you know.
Right.
And I was loved for that. But then in the end, also because I was adapting so much, the Thais and the trainers, they got used to that. So when I finally was like, this is not working, they'd be like, oh God,
you can't do that.
You know, I was like, oh God. So it's both, you know.
Yeah.
It's really both. Like, sometimes I wish that I was just like this foreigner who just stuck to like my foreign, you know, ways. But because sometimes I feel like those people, those fighters, somehow become more successful. I don't know.
Women, you think?
Hard. Yeah, like they come here with their coaches, and like the Thai trainers might be like, oh, she doesn't listen or whatever, but they don't know because they can't speak Thai.
Right.
And then if they win, they get treated well anyways, because as you know, it's how you do.
It's face.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the nicest person, if you lose, you're a fucking loser and everyone hates you. If you're an asshole and you win, everyone loves you. Then I have a really hard time like coming to terms with that in Thailand, that sort of like double-sided thing. you know, because I come from Sweden, and there it's like, oh, but if you're nice, then nice, good things should happen to you. But here it's kind of like the other way around. And like I know that I have to just accept that, but that's the hardest part. The longer I'm here, it's almost like it gets harder and harder to like accept those bits. But I mean, yeah.
You don't have to talk about yourself personally, but you've certainly witnessed it in the years that you've been here. Do you think that women having relationships in their gyms helps and or hinders? I know it's both, but in which way?
Yeah. I don't know. That's such a big thing. It really is. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know which aspect I should like talk about first. Okay, wait. One thing that like was in conversation between me and another female here at the gym a couple of days ago is like when you have a like a a steady boyfriend who is a trainer, they often aren't very supportive of you fighting. And some of them will be very verbal about that, but some of them, they don't say anything, but then it sort of like comes up. Like my boyfriend that I'm with now, I've been with him for 3.5 years. He's never said anything that let me think that he didn't want me to fight. But then, if I have a tough fight or I got beaten up or I lost, he's like, yeah, okay, look, they now. And it's like, what? Like you want me to quit? And I could tell that he's just waiting for me to like give it up. But he's like, oh God, just let her like get it out of her system. And it's like, why doesn't she want to stop? And I don't know, it's hard when you realize that like sometimes even your trainers, like your platonic trainers, they train you, they give them your all, but then when you talk with them like outside of the gym, they're like, shouldn't you stop fighting? Yeah,
what is that?
When it's like, but this is my trainer.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know. I think it's just that they don't really think that women should fight, but what they always say like, oh, they're scared that Jep or they're scared Nuai.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I know.
But boys, Jep and Nuai also, yeah? Like.
Yeah, but then I also understand that they don't fight because they want to. Like, that's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
We fight because we want to like fulfill something.
Right.
It's like a hobby and it becomes a passion. They would like, it's like they would never do it for fun. I know there's Thais, especially at this gym, there's like lots of richer Thais who come here and train, but they would never fight. But the Thai fighters, they don't start because they want to, they start because they have to.
It's like hurry up and retire.
Yeah, and then they can be a trainer and they can make money, whereas like we want to fight. So that's just also so odd. And I mean, we can understand it because like, of course, the country, it's different, but I think it's really hard for them to understand us.
Yeah.
You think there's still even trainers who meet foreigners every day. They're like, why do they want to fight?
Are you going to be fighting in the local stadia here while you're here before going to Japan?
Well, I wasn't gonna fight, but then I got this tournament with Sao Sing and Miriam and Misha, I think her name is. So I just said no to that first because that would interfere with the Japan trip. But then the trainers here found out about it and they got really excited and they spoke to the boss. So the boss talked to our sponsor in Japan and decided to like let me do this fight, probably because it's good for the gym, and let us go after. So, and because I haven't fought for a while or trained, I should probably do like a fight or two first. So yeah, I will be fighting in the local stadium, which is good because I haven't before. I mean, even when I was here, I didn't actually fight in the stadiums here. I did a random fight in Isan. I don't even know why.
You went with a trainer, didn't you? Like
yeah, it was Songkran, and it was like, yeah, do you want to fight in this temple festival? And I got like good money for that. I got like 7,000-8,000 baht. I don't even know how that was possible.
Well, there must have been a darpan on it or something, right?
No. I think
Teresa.
It was just like give money to the foreigner. I don't know. Sometimes you get like a tip just because like you're a white person, and it's like, you need this more than me. And then I did this title fight with Saifa. It didn't work really well as it was in her hometown and it was sponsored by the police and her dad's a policeman, so it was like, I think I'm gonna lose.
You need to knock out.
Yeah, and it's awful when you're going into a fight and you know that, and you know that you can beat them, but you kind of know that it's most likely won't happen. So I did a lot of those fights and that kind of led to me losing motivation in the end.
You have so many fights. Like, you are the Westerner who has behind me the most fights in Thailand. which is a lot. It means that you are fighting all the time, and you've fought people who are bigger than you, which a lot of Westerners, because of their size, when they come, they're fighting smaller. So you've you've faced all these things. What is your motivation for fights? I'm sure it's developed over the years, but like, is it that you want to face certain opponents, you want a certain belt, you want a certain promotion, you just, what do you look for?
I didn't realize that I was the foreigner with the most fight after you until you posted about it, and I was like, oh, right. In the beginning, I just wanted to fight. I just loved it, and I was pretty bad. I mean, I started after a month. Who does their first fight after a month, right? I was terrible. So I didn't have any goals like the first 5 years, and then I think after 5 years, like I started to get the good fights, and like it became, all of a sudden it had become like a career. So I was like, oh, and I think that was kind of like so many people come here and they're like obsessed with a certain outcome, like I want to be a world champion, and then they don't get what they want, and they get depressed and they go back home. But I never that was not my goal from the beginning. I just did it because I loved it, and I always thought, oh, people are asking how long are you going to do this for, and I was like, until I don't think it's fun anymore. But then I don't even know how I got to so many fights, because at one point it was almost like I can't stop because I don't know what to do otherwise. And I've actually heard the same from Thai, like younger like Thai guys who are maybe between 25, 30, who are trainers, and they keep on fighting. It's just because
it's all they know.
Yeah, and like it's not all I know. I mean, I can do something else, but it's almost like you just can't keep on, you can't stop.
Right.
And then I tried to actually stop, because I kind of ran out of opponents in Phuket, and I would only do these big fights, but then there wasn't enough like regular events. So sometimes it was like you're waiting for months, you're training your ass off, and then 2 weeks before they're like, oh, the sponsor has no money. So now it's like, maybe next year.
Female fight promotions are like that a lot. Yeah.
I had a whole year just training like crazy, and everything got canceled, and I was like, now I have to go back to Sweden to work for like 1 month, and then I missed 2 events in that month. It's like, great. So that killed my motivation too. But then when I kind of, should I do 100 fights? No, that's too much like left to hand. I thought 10 years, and it has passed 10 years now, but the last of those 10 years I wasn't really active. So, but I realized now, because I actually tried to retire. Like I have purposely not fought like the past year maybe. I did a little comeback like 6 months ago, and then it was like, who am I? If I don't fight, who am I? And it sounds so stupid. It was like I had this crisis.
Yeah.
It was like, but what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Because like I can still train, but then training without the goal of fighting, it's kind of like meaningless.
Feels empty.
Yeah, and then because it was such a passion for such a long time, I kind of need to replace that with, I can't just keep on like kicking pads for the rest of it. You need to do something. And then, God, it was so difficult, because it was like, okay, I kind of have lost the passion for fighting. I feel like it's coming to an end, and like I'm okay with that. I did loads. But then you need to replace that with something that you feel equal passion for. And it's not like you can just like think of something. It has to come naturally. So it was like this huge dip, like anticlimax. I was like, what am I going to do now? Oh, God. You can't just keep on fighting. I haven't really performed really well the past 2 years either. Like I can feel I haven't lived up to my potential. And that also led to me like, oh, shouldn't just keep fighting if I'm just going to like not do well. But then I think this whole thing with like getting this opportunity to go to Japan and be a trainer there, it kind of gave me, sounds so cliche, but it kind of gave me new purpose. So yeah, I'm really happy about that. And I mean, I love Thailand, but I feel like if I'm here all the time and I'm not fighting like I was before, I feel like the lifestyle here can like be a little bit toxic. It's not, it has changed me a lot as a person. some of it to the worse, if you know what I mean. When I go back to Sweden, I realized I became super lazy because life here is really laid back, and like I don't want to go back to like 9 to 5. It's like, geez. So I think it's good to like do something new and like go abroad, work for 6 months, a year, come back here for a couple of months. Like I would love to do that, and still like I can't imagine my life without Muay Thai in it. And people are always saying, oh, you can become a trainer, and I know I can, but it's not like that was ever my dream.
I get that one a lot too, and I'm like, I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah. It's like I know I can, but then it's like I'm not like really a good teacher. And then I don't know. There's a million people who can hold pads better than me, you know. So, but then I don't know. I think I would be a good coach for like girls who fight, and I think how I can help them is. I mean, the Thai trainers are great trainers, but they learned Muay Thai when they were kids, and they don't remember not knowing how to like do a kick. Whereas like I remember because I was like 27 and it's been 2 years and I still couldn't kick. And I remember like when one trainer told me that thing that made me like, now I get it. So like I can explain that to somebody so that they can just skip those like awkward 2 years when you're doing it wrong. So yeah, I do feel like I can probably be useful. And just teach stuff. I'm sure you know this well. When you fight a lot, you kind of learn by doing.
Yes.
So all these things about the points that Thais know because they grew up with it. Like being on the ropes and getting kneed on the back and like, oh, but I'm not getting hurt, but I can hear the audience like, and then you lose and you have no idea why. And the trainers are all angry with you.
Right.
Why did you do this? And it's like, but I didn't know.
Yeah, or your head was low.
Yeah, so I can explain that to other fighters, new fighters, because they need to know that before they do it, not after. But the Thai trainers, they don't think of telling them because they don't know that we don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I can be like useful as a coach or
when you
trainer.
say that you're fighting but you're not doing well, what is doing well for you?
Well, I think it's when you know that you should have done better and you don't even know why you didn't. Like I've had fights, so many fights, like especially the past 2 years when it's like, did I do anything in that fight? And especially, and I think as a clinch, because you're a clinch fighter as well, so you know how much it kind of relies on round 3 and 4. So you kind of learn this like round 1, 2, do nothing. 3, 4, do your thing, and then 5, you can just dance around unless you're losing. And then when you fight 3 rounds, and you have to like, it's completely different rules.
I hate 3-round fights.
I hate it too. Yeah. This is also why I don't want to really fight abroad, because like I love Muay Thai the way it is in Thailand. I love this thing with the gambling. I love the trainer telling you like, oh, about the odds.
Yeah.
That's the part that that's the part I love. That's how I want to fight, and that's how I'm like comfortable fighting. It sounds like I'm just saying that because like I would lose otherwise. But it's just, I really love Muay Thai the way it's fought in Thailand. I know you do too.
Well, this is something that Kevin and I were talking about, is that when you're coming and fighting Thai women, they've been doing it for way longer than we have. So their understanding of space and timing and kicking and all these things, we're learning how to kick at 27. They learned how to kick at 7. Like they win the kicking game. So a lot of Western women, we kind of have this advantage if we can be knee fighters, of like being strong, working hard, like go in and cut the space and kind of put our pressure on that way. But in my experience, and we don't know in your experience, but we kind of got this feeling off of your fights that it feels like when you're a knee fighter as a woman, there's always this pressure to like develop the femur on the side, like become more well-rounded or something. And it's like, no, I'm a good knee fighter. And they're like, no, but we have to teach you how to kick. And you're like, do you though?
I've had so many trainers like, now you're gonna kick, and it's like, good luck.
You're like, I'm not gonna win.
I'll do like 1,000 kicks every day. I do nothing in the, like the more I kick in training, the less likely I am to kick because my legs are too tired.
Me too.
But then also, I know what you mean, but I had different gyms, but I think when I was kind of like fighting the most and the best, which is probably when I was at first Rawai and then Sylvie, they probably wish that I could do more than just knee, but they were also like fuck it. Let's just focus on what she's good at.
But you were also beating fighters who were like unbeatable at that time. Like there'd be a really good fighter at Bangla that like no one could beat, and then it's like put Teresa at her.
Yeah, but even my boss were like amazed. You know, it was like, oh, I don't want you to fight her because you're just gonna lose. It was like, thanks. Then I had to, because like it was in the Muay Thai magazine how like my gym was avoiding. And it wasn't me. It was my boss.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. Everyone thought I was gonna like get destroyed. And I managed to beat her, and I thought it was just luck, probably. But then her name's Duuglas-Ittu. She's amazing.
Poor cow.
Yeah, I rematched her. Like that was my last fight, but she had put on like she was so big and strong.
This is Peta P.
No, that's not her. That's another girl.
She was called Poor cow before.
Duuglas-Ittu.
Oh,
and this is Duuglas-Ittu. So those are two different girls, and they were like. They were the two top girls in Phuket. Fought with Peta P twice, and I didn't beat her still.
I put your contact back in your eye in that fight, and it was like it will be one of my life experiences that I never ever forget.
Yeah, that's
in the corner trying to put your contact back in your eye.
That was awesome. I wish I had someone doing it. Like my contact comes out like so often. I'm used to it. Jeez. Yeah, I fought her for a title. Peta P when she was because she was like a teenager then, so she was still growing, and it was at 51, which I probably could have done better if it was the day before, but this was like the same day, and I was like, oh, no, I can't perform well at 51. So I was like, I could barely stand, and it's funny because the promoter saw that, and he was like, you should just fight a bigger weight category, and I was like, thank you. And then I got to rematch her years later when I met you, but she had changed her style.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, now I'm going to do this and that. Because I remember she had a very special style. She always went around the waist. She didn't do any of that anymore. Now she's just kicking.
But it's like 3 or 4 years apart, right?
Yeah. So people can change style. It's just not me. The Thais can, because they're better. So yeah, that was fun. But I mean, yeah, she's very good. She's very strong as well.
Strong.
Yeah, very strong. And she does these faces. I love it.
Oh.
Like she can get away with that.
Yeah, her Ram Muay too. Very like tough. Yeah.
You know, when you stand there in the middle with the bongkong on, sometimes they do this magic shit, like they'll step on your foot or blow in your face, and it's like, whoa. It really like spooks me out. So it feels really real just because they're like from Thailand. It'd be ridiculous if I tried to do it. Oh God.
Have you seen a change in the Western women who are coming to Thailand? Like either in their goals or their skills or what they do?
I think, this is what you touched on earlier, like how the fight scene in Phuket has changed. Because I would say maybe the past 2 years, it's almost like the foreigners who come, they're like catching up with the Thais. So there aren't really any great Thai girls around anymore. I don't know why. The ones the Thai girls who fight in Phuket now, they're much fewer than before. Either they're not very good and they can fight with these girls who have like a couple of fights, up to 10 fights, or they're good but they kind of like passed their fighting day, so they're just doing it for the money, and then they will just either become really big and strong, or they will just become super like defensive so that they can fight often. But the foreign girls who come, like, I mean, some of them are like world class. Like some big names are coming for sure. They're very, very strong. So they have kind of taken over, I would say, which is good. Yeah, it's good for, you know, Muay Thai in the world, you know, because foreigners are becoming better and better, guys as well. But I mean, I kind of miss the old days, because I mean, I don't want to diss anyone, but like a lot of foreigners are mostly just very, very strong, whereas the Thais, you know, it's more technical and strategy. But the level of foreigners, it's much more technical than it was before, but then it's still much more just strength. So I think it probably has maybe scared off some Thai girls, like they don't want to be like mauled by like some super strong fighter, and like before they could like win still, but now they're just gonna get like beaten by somebody who's like super strong and good. So I think that probably has I mean, this is just my personal theory. Like, I don't have any evidence for this. This is kind of just like what I've seen. But then on the other hand, I haven't fought in Phuket for the past couple of years because I ran out of opponents. Even when I tried to fight, they were like, no, called all the stadiums. And it would just like, Nung Ning, yeah, we fought each other 3 times already. Farida, yeah, I'd love to rematch her, but now she is like 4 weight classes above me, so like I can't. And yeah, then it was like Duuglas-Ittu.
Yeah.
That was like my only options.
Are you talking about Bukao, who's now at Sutai?
Yes.
Oh, she's so good.
She is so good.
She's scary. We saw her fight a man, and it was like really good.
She's amazing. Like it's such a pity that she hasn't fought like more on the big. I'm sure she has when she was younger, because I know she's a boxing champion. But like she's so good. Yeah. She's so good. And she's had these, like, I mean, she's been around in Phuket for years, and like she'll beat everyone, then she'll like disappear for 2 years, and then she'll come back and be even better than before. You'd think that she'd be like, oh, you know, after you've been off for a couple of years, you know, you're a bit rusty. Like, not her. Yeah, she's just beating everyone. Yeah, so like she was my last fight, and I had beaten her twice. Of course, she really wanted to beat me, and like. She was bigger, like way bigger than before, but she was so strong. It was just like, no, I could feel straight away. I was like,
you can see how strong she is in fights. She's
crazy. But she's like, I have such respect for her as a fighter. She's amazing. She's good at everything. Like if somebody asks me, like, how do I beat her? It's like, it's like whatever you do, she's gonna like.
She has an answer.
Yeah. Every range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, she's really, really good. I have lots of respect for her. My favorite.
Checking your question.
When I met you in Bangkok before that fight, when you fought Tapi again, you remarked that it was amazing that I was wrapping my own hands, and how you felt like you were just overly dependent on your trainer.
Yeah.
I'm not normal. Like, I'm not the norm. I think that what you were experiencing is the norm. So what do you think that is in terms of like wanting to feel taken care of, and like when you're being brought to a fight, you want your trainers to be looking out for you, on your side, making sure they're taking care of you, things like that. Like, what is that feeling? Because you have a lot of experience.
Yeah, like I think I didn't realize that kind of, I don't think it is the norm though. It's the norm in Phuket, and it's what I was used to, but I didn't realize until I met you. And I was like, I can't believe she can, I mean, you can see trainers wrap their own hands, but that's different. But the funny thing is that a few days later, after that fight, 3 days later, me and Namtan did this show fight in like Yesotor. Yeah. And I had to wrap my own hands. And if I wouldn't have met you, I would have been like freaking out over that. I would have been so sure, like I can't. But because you were doing it, I was like, oh, Sylvie's doing it, so like I can do it too. And I had to ask a random stranger to like rub me down, and ask somebody to be in my like I knew nobody there, and so that really helped me.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I
feel free in a strange way.
You're like, wait, I know how to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, that's what I felt stupid, because I was like, geez, I've been such a princess, and like this is not a big. It's almost like, but you know, especially when you're less experienced, it's like all these little details, they have to be perfect, otherwise it's gonna like jinx your fight.
It's almost like superstition, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, your favorite shorts weren't washed, so you're gonna, you know, you're obsessed with these things. Yeah. But I mean, I had so much shit happening like early, so you know, this just, you know, changing opponents last minute and stuff. Yeah. So I got used to that early. But just the whole thing with, I don't know, because I've always just had my hands wrapped like perfectly. But actually, I was in Isan, and this is years before I met you. And I did some fight in Isan, and like I was sitting on the back of a truck, and my then boyfriend was like wrapping my hands really poorly. And I was like, what did you do? Yeah. And I was like, can I go to the toilet? And they were like, oh. And they put like a towel over me to like lead me out. Like, how? Why can I not be? I still don't understand why that was like such a big deal. Like nobody could see me. But he wrapped my hands so poorly, and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, this isn't Phuket. And now I kind of know what he meant.
Yeah.
But then I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? He's just lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it probably is just Phuket. You know what I mean? Because I was like, how am I gonna fight with this shit? But I mean, of course you can.
In my first 2 years when I was at Chiang Mai, and these are things that I've experienced since and now I'm fine with, but I just wasn't ready for them at the time that they were happening because I was like kind of new. But I took everything personally of like people being disinterested meant that they didn't care about me rather than that they do this 5 days a week and like it's not special to them, but it's special to me. And we made a joke, one of the young boys wrapped my hands and we called it the toilet paper wrap because it's kind of like if he had just taken and like wrapped it around the hand. It was so shitty. And it was like, now it's funny, right? But it's because now I understand that like these fights are not important to them. You don't have to have a perfect wrap for the fight that for your opponent is Tuesday. We're all like, I have to win, and like for your opponent, they're like, I'm fighting again on Friday. Like it's not a big deal kind of thing. But it's interesting how much that's in your head, you know? Like, especially when I heard that you were going to do this show fight with Nam Dan, and you were like basically driving out there with Hormone Pet, right? Yeah. Like all the things that are fucked up about that, the hand wrapping and the like massage are the smallest.
Yeah, because even then people were like, isn't that, I think even like a Thai promoter was like, you shouldn't be like sleeping in the same room as your opponent. And I was kind of like, why not? And then I was like, wait,
but didn't
he has a point.
Didn't Lek even like coach you on how he wanted you to do this show fight? Like,
it was like, it was so clearly a show fight, but it was like without them actually saying it. It was like we're just doing this to make her look good, and
right.
like, and they were talking me up so much and like just lying, and I was like, ooh.
So was it literally
to make her
fight? Was it like?
No, it was.
Were you supposed to lose?
I knew that. I knew that like they were gonna give the win to her,
so
but it was called a show fight, and they were like saying. First they kind of say like, oh, it's like sparring, and then they were like, oh, just do what you want, and then she'll just kind of like adapt after you. And I was really sort of like, it was very vague, but they were very like adamant about it being a show fight. But like I understood that like this is for her to get the win. But then, because they said this, show fight, it's like sparring or do what you want, whatever. And so I was kind of like, when we opened it, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll start first. And because she was really badly beaten up after the fight with Ashley. So, I mean, she was in pain, and I was like, maybe not in much pain as her, but like, none of us wanted to like, you know, low kick each other, punch each other in the face. So I was like, okay, I'll sort of just like kick her really lightly to sort of like show that, okay, let's take it easy. And she was boom, she was going 100%. I was like, whoa. So she wasn't fucking sparring. She was going super hard. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just switch to real fighting then.
Surprise.
That was funny.
Perfect.
And it was like on some Cambodian TV channel. I have no idea what that fight was about, but apparently it was a show fight with a fix. I don't know. Yeah. It's almost like the weirdest part was like that was 3 days after we both fought, and we were.
That's so crazy.
None of us should have fought.
I've never heard of such a thing.
We still both had like black eyes, and it's like, yeah, let's hurt each other some more. Great idea.
You drove up together, right? Like you were in the same truck or van or something?
Yeah, and it took forever because it was Songkran, so everyone was like, you know, it was like a huge queue, so it took like 14 hours or something. Yeah.
Do you have anything?
No, I think it's good.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. That was fun. I was really nervous, but this was just like a fun talk.
Maybe we can talk again.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you coming back to Chiang Mai? Are you going to Japan?
Yeah, but that's going to take a while. Apparently it takes like 2-3 months for like this visa to process. I guess we'll know in June.
Are you moving there?
No, it's 6 months.
Oh, and then when you come back, are you coming back to Phuket or to Chiang Mai?
I think because my boyfriend is now employed here, so I guess
so
here.
Come back here.
Yeah, and like I don't really have anything in Phuket. Like I could go to Phuket, but like no.
It's exciting having you here in Chiang Mai because you're a historic female fighter, and the Phuket scene is really no longer the center of female fighting. Chiang Mai
that's true.
is now the center of female fighting. There's female fights every night of the week here.
Yeah, there's like the big new stadiums, and then this new so the tournament that I'm doing apparently is like an opening night of like they're gonna make Loy
You
Craw
do it
like
weekly.
Right,
it's gonna be
regular, yeah.
but weekly with only that's huge.
Yeah.
I hope it really
And
works
cash
out.
prizes and everything.
Yeah.
I think this is going to really grow when you come back.
I hope so. Yeah.
It's going to be very.
And they're
exciting.
going to do that tournament in like different weight classes, and I can't remember who told me, but maybe it was the promoter who said, oh, there's like lots of girls from Isan who are like, they're queuing to like
come
fight
over.
on this.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's great.
So exciting.
And that's great for the foreigners here too, because there's
Yes.
like more talent coming.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, and I hope the pay, like when I heard the pay here is terrible.
The pay here
Very
is
low,
terrible.
very low.
I was like, I heard it's like 3,000-4,000. Then there was a girl here at the gym. She's Thai, but like she has an Australian husband, so she speaks perfect English. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you see her as a foreigner. She got paid 800.
What?
800? I was like, I felt so bad for thinking 3,000-4,000 was crap, because like in Phuket I get like 7-8.
Yeah.
No, the pay
800.
scale is very, very low here.
That is not
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
But
so
maybe it will grow.
Yes,
With
I really
more
hope
Westerners
so.
coming, more
yeah.
of a fight scene growing and growing. I think it could grow.
And I feel that that's what this promote Pipong, right?
Pipong, yeah.
That's what he has in mind, probably, to like just give, like girls from the Thai girls from Isan coming here, like just giving the Thai fighters like a bigger opportunity to actually make money, like
Yeah.
like the male fighters do.
Yeah.
Because the pay is terrible. I mean, even those big events like in Bangkok that we do sometimes, we get like 15,000, and like the stars they get like 50. It's like,
Oh, I fight on this show for Karchuk, and I am a draw. Like they want me on that card. I'm a little bit of like a star on it, and I don't
Yeah.
get paid the same as the shittiest men on it. And I'm like, for what? Like, what is that? It's crazy.
After you had done it, that promoter asked me to
They put you on a poster even though you
I
didn't
was like, I'm not doing it. That's such a sort of like taboo for a fighter to say no, and I'm just fuck, no, I'm not doing it. Say whatever you want. I'm not doing it. And like when I saw your fight, I was like blown away. Like I was so impressed,
Thank
like
you.
by you. That's just fucking amazing.
It's really fun. You actually might like it.
I don't know. I did fight with Hong Tong on one of those Kad Chuak on Channel 5, but our fight was with gloves. But all the guys, I think they weren't even maybe Thai, maybe they were like Cambodian or something. They're like young guys, and their faces, like, because they're all
Yeah, but like little like
all the
cuts
little cuts,
everywhere.
yeah,
I was like,
Yeah.
they just looked so rough, and I was like, why would you want to do that when you can like fight with gloves? And some people like it. Yeah, so I'm impressed, but I'm not going to do it anytime soon.